All right, my friends, and welcome to a bonus episode here of the Red Delta Project podcast, simplifying fitness by taking a fundamental approach to diet and exercise to help you be fit and live free. I'm Matt Shifley, and joining me today is my compatriot, my friend, my colleague, Al Kavadlo. Al has got a brand new program out, the Shredded Dad Diet Plan. He's been fielding a lot of questions and a lot of information over the years about nutrition and diet and getting lean and stuff. And he's collected it all together into a comprehensive plan that is jam-packed with a lot of immediate takeaways that make it one of the most practical and real world modern day approaches to making food actually work for you rather than against you. So I'm going to shut my mouth and let the man himself take on over. Al, it's great to have you on once again, the Red Delta Project podcast.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Matt. I'm glad you are enjoying the Shredded Dad Diet Plan. And yeah, it's one of those things like yourself. I've done a lot of fitness books and fitness programs over the years, but I've never really had a program that was fully devoted to diet. Maybe it's been an afterthought at the end of one of my fitness programs. Oh, here's a couple of diet tips to keep in mind too. But the fitness was always the main thing, and anything related to nutrition was secondary. So it's something that a lot of people have asked me about over the years. It's something I have a lot of thoughts on, and now I finally compiled them all into one cohesive program, and I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, I was going through a lot of the materials that were in it, and it echoes a lot of what you've already championed before in your approaches with fitness: simplicity, practicality, immediate practical use. It's not something like, as soon as I was going through, it's like I could put that into play and that into play. I don't need to like read through and go through the entire thing and then try to figure out how to use it. It's very immediate application for immediate behavior change. Is that something you did on purpose?
Well, it is a lot like my fitness philosophy, and so much with nutrition and fitness is purposely overcomplicated by certain experts or people in the industry. And I like to demystify things. I like to keep it really simple. I like to keep it really practical. And like you said, I want to give people something that they can just apply to their life right away. And if that's what you took away from this, that makes me feel like hopefully people are going to be able to buy it and actually get real results.
Fantastic. Now, I wanted to dive in. Let's say I'm one of these individuals who's kind of been following your stuff for a while, been doing my push-ups, some maybe getting a little extra cardio and stuff like that. But diet, as you know, is a little bit of an apprehensive topic for a lot of people. Like I learned early on, you go to a party, you don't talk politics, you don't talk religion, and you sure as heck don't talk diet, nutrition kind of thing. So what if I'm looking at this and I'm a little nervous about, is he going to tell me that I have to eat nothing but steak and rice for the rest of my life? Or is it going to be really an imposition? What would you say to me if I was like, I want to be healthy and fit, but I have these hangups and these hesitations? What can you do to kind of set my mind at ease and get into this program a little better?
Well, you're right. It is a polarizing topic. And I've been it's been interesting to see the strong reactions that people have to me talking about what I eat on social media. And that said, I purposely tried to design this program to be as flexible as possible. So a lot of what I'm saying in there is, well, this is what I do. This is what's worked for me. Here's something that you might want to do differently if your goal is a little different or if your preference is a little bit different. And so much of what makes a diet program successful or not, or a workout program for that, is adherence. And what I tried to do with this book and this program is write it in a way that I'm not just telling the reader what to do. I'm convincing them and making them compelled to want to do it. And that is, people know what they need to be doing. People know if they're eating junk food that, I shouldn't be eating this. So it's somewhat of a psychological book and program, because I'm trying to get people to change the way that they think.
Absolutely. And there's so much more behind not just what we think, because there's a very big difference between what we think and what we know. We can cram a lot of facts and data and information in our heads. And I think oftentimes as authors and producers of programs, it's always so tempting to just put a bunch of data and information out there. But getting someone to change their orientation to food, their orientation to their bodies and their habits and behaviors is so incredibly much harder than just putting up a bunch of data and stats and saying, don't do this, but do this instead. What strategies have you used in making this program that allow people to harness more control over what they're eating and what they're utilizing with their body?
Well, I want people to read the thing, so I don't want to give away too much. But a lot of the way that I tried to write this book is in a persuasive way, not necessarily in a journalistic way. So people may disagree with some of my exact food choices or meal choices, and that's fine. I tell people, if you want to use this kind of oil instead or do that instead, you can do what you want to do. But there are general overarching principles that I think aren't really debatable. And what I want to do is to get people to understand that their choices are going to very directly impact their results. And I want to compel them to make the right choices. And that's a very challenging thing to do as a coach. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it.
Exactly. Yeah. I heard I don't know if it was a doctor or a nurse the other day. She was making a video in her scrubs and everything. And she had a very compelling way of telling people, or making it in this video, this plea for people to start taking better care of themselves, particularly with diet and secondary with some exercise, because she's in the trenches every day taking care of people who are sick, who have chronic diseases, who have chronic illnesses. And she's like, you all out there think that you're going to be fine for most of your life, and then at the very end, it's going to go belly up and turn sideways, and then it's going to be done. She's like, that's not going to be the case for a lot of folks. Like, chances are very good that if you have the typical sedentary, lot of like junk food, processed foods, lifestyles, like if you're not taking care of your health, that you're going to be sick and hurt and in pain for a very, very, very long time before you actually leave this realm. She's like, it's going to be bad for a while. And she's like, and don't expect a doctor to fix it for you, because a doctor helps you manage the illness that you already have. But avoiding these things is your responsibility first and foremost. And I see you like as a warrior on the front lines, trying to prevent people from that fate and saying, like, this is where it happens now, folks. So, like, if you want to have a good quality of life later on, it's not going to be, okay, I'm 70 years old, what do I do to get in shape? It's like, you do what gets you in shape now when you're 40 or 30 or even 20. And this type of program is exactly in line with that.
Well, it's refreshing to hear of somebody in the medical community that's saying that, because, well, a lot of people in the medical community, they want to continue to have patients, so they don't mind if people are sick. So that's encouraging and refreshing. And it's true. People do need to take accountability for themselves. And I think anybody who's listening to this podcast, or who follows you, or who follows me, wants to take accountability for themselves. And that's why they're listening to this. So if you are someone who's listening to this, who is having a hard time with your diet, because I hear from so many people, and I'm sure you do too, Matt, who say to me, oh, I work out really well, but I just can't get my diet under control, and I snack at night, and I know I shouldn't be eating this stuff, and I drink too much, but I just can't figure out a way to stop. And that's who I'm writing to, is people who really want to do better and are having a hard time following through on it. And I'm trying to hold them accountable on some level and make them hold themselves accountable, because that's really, as a trainer, that's how you truly succeed, is once you get the client to start doing it without you.
Mm-hmm. I always, they talk in business world and stuff like, what's the avatar of your client or your ideal customer, like what's their age and everything like that. And I've always thought, I cater to the frustrated masses, those who are very frustrated either with their current state and they're sick of it and saying, I got to make a change, or they're frustrated with a lot of the paralysis by analysis and the runaround rigmarole that is so prevalent in our fitness culture of getting pulled in 20 different directions by everything you see on social media and everything. It's like, you got to do this, now you got to do this, and it's stuff like that. And I see your program as like a knife, just cutting through all that and putting the person much more in charge of what they're doing, rather than thinking that they've got to follow some sort of this arbitrary program that they just found online, that they put the program in charge and they're not making actual decisions, but they're making the decisions for themselves.
And, in the beginning, people need that because change is hard. People really need to have their hand held. And that's why this book does include very specific recipes and specific meal plans that I want people to use, either exactly as written, if that's what they're most comfortable with, or as a reference point to then modify. So it's important to remember what that's like for that person who's having a hard time making that change. And that's why I put this together in the way that I did. And I want, to your point about who your target audience is, I want to reach guys like us, guys in their 40s who care about their health, who don't want to have the fate that you described earlier, who recognize that it's time to take action now so that when I'm older, I am able to play with my grandkids or, do all the things that I want to do when I'm 60, 70, 80 years old.
Amen. And even so, like, I'm noticing, and I don't know if you've recognized this too, Al, but I was having this discussion with a client, a friend of mine, the other day, and she's like, oh, when you're younger, you don't need to worry about it so much. And when you're younger, the youth kind of protects you. I'm like, I don't think that's the case anymore. Like, I know people in their early 20s who have shot to hell knees, who are already on 2 or 3 medications, like who have these lifestyle patterns that I used to associate with people well into their golden years. And it's like, wait, you're not even 25 yet, and you're already on 3 medications and you need back surgery? Like, how is this happening? Like, it seems like the diseases, the chronic diseases that we usually associated with old age are just creeping down the age ladder, and they're coming for us all, kind of thing, unless we can actually take better care of ourselves earlier and earlier in life. Have you noticed that same thing?
I feel like 2 opposing things are happening at the same time. The world is simultaneously getting in worse shape and in better shape. The extremes are getting farther apart. I was just reading about a marathoner, a Kenyan guy who's 23 years old, who just ran the fastest marathon ever recorded. I believe it was 2 hours and 35 seconds, which is unbelievably fast to keep that pace for even 1 lap around a track. And this guy did it for a marathon. And it makes me think, well, it's only a matter of time before someone gets under 2 hours, because he's only 36 seconds away. And yet, to your point, on the other end of the spectrum, you've got people who are 23 years old and 500 pounds and already diabetic and having all of these issues that you wouldn't expect somebody to develop until much later in life after decades of not taking care of themselves. So, you've got parents who were raised eating nothing but processed junk food, who are feeding that to their children from a very early age. And those kids are growing up unhealthy and developing bad habits. So by the time they're in their early 20s, they have 20 plus years of eating all this garbage and not exercising enough. And it wreaks havoc on them. So the best thing is to start as early as possible. But it is never too late. As long as you're alive, you can start turning it around the other way. So sometimes people hear me make a rant, like I said a second ago, and they think, it's too late for me, I'm giving up. So don't think that. Even if you have gone too far down the wrong path, once you recognize it, turn the car around, which is the hard part, making that change, admitting to yourself that you need to make that change.
Okay, so is that step 1? Like, let's say let's say me, I'm 45 years old now. I've been living a certain way and going down a certain path, not happy where I'm at, not happy with where I'm going, recognizing I got to start going in a different path to some direction, but it feels so overwhelming. There's so much like I'm supposed to do and everything, and I'm getting pulled in a million different directions. what would you say to myself to get me just started with slowing down in that way and start slowly going in the direction I need to go into? What would you say would be a good place to start with that?
There's a saying, you've probably heard this one, that you wind up being the sum of the people you spend the most time with. And a lot of people don't have anyone in their life who's close to them who's fitness minded. So for people to find someone like you or myself online, sometimes that's the only personal connection that they have to somebody who's actually spreading the kind of message that we're trying to spread, and encouraging them to eat healthy and encouraging them to exercise. For all we know, other people in their life are doing the opposite, discouraging them from exercising or encouraging them. Oh, have that cookie. Don't worry about it. Oh, have a drink with me, man. No, it's cool. Let's go out. Let's have another one. So the first step is just seeking out other people to surround yourself with. And if you can't find them in your immediate world, at least that's one of the great things about the online world, is we're able to connect with people who are everywhere.
Yeah. And it's also something I've noticed over time too, like of social media. You can curate the content on social media to a large degree, like especially on YouTube. When one of the best things I ever found on it was you can go, if YouTube suggests a video and you're like, oh no, that's not what I want to be, like, that's not the message I want in my life. You can tell it, not this, that's not what I want. I've done that on several videos before, and I didn't get exposed to those messages again. But every time I click on something, I'm now more mindful of, okay, is this a positive influence in my life? This person here. I watch an Kavadlo video. Yeah, very positive. Okay, I'm going to make sure I watch at least 2 or 3 of those while I'm making dinner. And that's like me curating the algorithm to say, feed me more of this positive stuff instead of the negatives, taking more control over that. And I see that as very much like the digital relationships we have. We can curate our own digital relationships. It's not like the algorithms are fully in control and we're completely powerless. We have some amount of influence over it, I've noticed.
You vote with your clicks. You vote with what you're giving your screen attention to. So
I love that attitude. I love that you vote with your clicks. That is so awesome. That's great. So anyway, getting a little off topic. So you're mentioning like these relationships and things like that. So even before we're starting to talk about calories and processed foods and stuff, we have to recognize that this whole nutrition and diet thing is much more of a holistic approach to life and how we're living our life. It's not just reading a food label and saying, oh, okay, there's this many grams of protein in it, that means it's something I should be eating. It goes beyond that, doesn't it?
Absolutely. One of the biggest objections that I hear from people when I'm trying to get them to change their eating habits is that they're worried they're not going to enjoy their food as much. They're worried, oh no, I won't get to eat this thing that I really like that I know is bad for me. And in some instances, there is a way to still keep that thing in the mix if you really like eating it. And in other instances, it's like, whoa, well, maybe you're not going to be having, certain things anymore, but you can enjoy the things that you are going to get to have. And that's a big part of it and this is always what I've said about working out too. And I think you've said this over the years also, Matt. You've got to find what you like. There are enough ways to do it out there that you don't have to suffer through something that makes you miserable. But you do have to find something that's actually effective and good for you.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the big compass needles that I've learned to follow over the years that has always led me down the right path is, okay, I've got these basic fitness principles I need to take care of. Like if I want to make a muscle stronger, I've got to work it against some sort of resistance, obviously. But the biggest litmus test for me is this program or this approach, and that is it just enhancing not just my body or my strength or my getting leaner, but is it just contributing to a more positive quality of life? And if I'm using an approach or method and it's compromising my energy level and my mood and my concentration, to some degree how I interact with friends and stuff, if I'm noticing a degradation in my quality of life, that's a red flag of this probably needs to change a little bit. This isn't quite the path I need to be taking here. And that's always been something that I look at more of a holistic approach. And yeah, I'm finding things that with diet, if anything, the healthier I eat, and I learn, the best ways of eating for myself, and learning to adhere to principles, I'm enjoying food a heck of a lot more than I used to. And I'm getting so much more enjoyment from food than back in the day when I was only, eating certain foods and stuff like that. It's like it's much more of a improvement in the quality of life. It shouldn't come as a either or, it's both.
Absolutely. Focus on what you're gaining, not what you're losing. Maybe
Hmm.
you're not going to have bagels and pasta anymore, but you're going to, maybe you've never tried certain types of fish and you're going to have sea bass for the first time and discover that you love sea bass, or something like that may happen. So I've certainly discovered a lot of new foods once I started cutting other ones out. And sea bass is great, by the way.
I'll have to put it on my grocery list. I haven't been a big seafood fan for much of my life, but I'm getting more into it. I had clams the other day at a restaurant, and it was very enjoyable. And it's like, well, okay, there's a new thing for me as well. And it's fun to experiment and be open-minded to things. I think that's one of the biggest things that holds people back from change in a positive direction. It's not so much just a willpower, like I've got to make these changes happen. It's just an openness to explore and experiment and try new things. And if we're not open to new experiences, then we just get stuck doing what we've always done, and therefore having what we've always had, for better or for worse, when it comes to results.
Yeah, I agree completely. So it's just one of those things, Matt. People need something to keep them accountable. And if they're not keeping themselves accountable, that's what we do, is we hold them accountable. Hopefully.
Yeah. Now, so your plan has accountability features to it. Is there like a way that people can also get in touch with you and get some coaching and guidance from you as well?
I encourage everyone who's ever bought any of my programs who has a question or a problem to reach out to me directly. And I will always try to troubleshoot it for you. And if somebody wants to go farther than that, obviously I offer coaching in a one-on-one context as well, for people who want to go, all in. But if you've made the commitment to buying one of my programs and you are having a problem with it, I'm happy to give you some help included with the purchase price of the program.
Wonderful, wonderful. Always the man supporting the frustrated masses picking things up. Now, let's say, for example, like I'm a calisthenics guy, right? I'm hitting the park, pull-ups, push-ups, that sort of thing. Are there any special like dietary considerations that I should bring into my awareness being a calisthenics guy versus a weights guy, or is it pretty much about the same thing overall?
I would say it's pretty much the same overall. Like you said, calisthenics and weights, they're not really that different. They're just, you're breaking the muscle down in two different ways.
So when we're looking at, let's say I'm going from a very sedentary kind of lifestyle. I'm looking at making changes from various fronts here. So, okay, I'm going to start working out. I'm going to start exercising by a couple of Al's programs, like old man strength kind of thing. Okay, good. I got that for the exercise. Now, the diet plan. Okay, got that kind of thing. So got a lot of changes going on where I'm making a lot of differences and stuff. How can somebody make a lot of change, but not at the same time feel kind of like overwhelmed? Like if they wake up one day and they're just like, oh, this is just so much. I'm just getting overwhelmed. What would you advise them in that scenario?
Well, it is useful to make these changes gradually. And for that matter, everything that I talk about in my program that I tell people to avoid, they're all things that I've eaten myself many times. So it's important that people understand that I'm human, and I'm not saying, oh, I've never eaten these foods, you can't have them ever. I'm giving people an ideal to strive for. And if they fall short of that ideal, hopefully they do better than they would have done if they weren't striving toward it.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? So you don't have to
Absolutely.
do it perfectly. You don't have to do everything. It's not realistic to expect that you're going to suddenly completely change and be a different person overnight. Change never happens like that. It's always gradual. And then one day you look back and you're like, oh, I am a completely different person. But it didn't happen in one particular moment.
Mm-hmm. I heard a great quote. This guy was referencing big life changes and stuff, and someone was asking about it, and he said it happens so slowly and then all at once. It's like an avalanche. It's like all the things that make an avalanche happen so slowly, or an earthquake. It's slow, gradual build up and changes and stuff, and it's almost imperceivable, and then it all happens at once. And I feel like when it comes to healthy lifestyles, it's kind of a similar thing where you're kind of just chipping away and you're making a little change here and there, and you're moving. And I'm sure you get emails. I get people I train in person and emails all the time going, I've been doing this for like 2 months. It doesn't feel like much has changed, or a whole lot is really going on. There's these things, but it's not. And then all of a sudden, bang, it's like they just wake up one day and there's a different person staring back at them in the mirror, or people are complimenting them. And it seems like that's the same thing when it comes to like personal change and development in health and fitness. It's slow and then all at once. Is that a similar thing you've experienced, or different?
Yeah, I think that's more or less what I was saying, or at least it feels like it happens all at once, even though it was gradual. You notice it suddenly. It's like if you've got X amount of money in the bank, and little by little you're spending your money. You've got $100,000, $10,000, $1,000, $50, and it's like, oh, I have no money.
Yeah.
You didn't go broke on that last purchase, although technically you did.
Unless you put it all on Black 15 in Vegas or something. Yeah, it's a process. And then you just wake up and, what the hell? Like, how the heck did I end up here? And that can happen both in the positive
and
that's
how people get really far gone the other way too. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Is they don't realize it until it's too late, or at least until they think it's too late. Or once they've realized it, it's too overwhelming to acknowledge all the damage that they did. Mm-hmm. And in order to turn it around, you kind of have to acknowledge the damage.
Yeah. So if I'm feeling like it feels like it's too late, I know intellectually it's not, but I feel in my heart like it's too late for me, or, oh, what's the use? I might as well just get drunk every night and eat, junk food the rest of my life, kind of thing. If I've got that attitude, how can I start to emotionally kind of turn the ship just a little tiny bit to give me some hope that things can definitely improve, versus this hopeless pit of despair of, what's the use?
If you can't find it in yourself, you have to try to find it elsewhere. So you've got to, like I said before, you've got to seek out positive role models, people who you can look to as an example. And maybe somebody listening to this is looking at you or me in that way.
Okay, so let's be role models here then now. Like, what's a scenario in your life where you kind of had a moment where you're like, okay, I need to make some change in my health or whatnot, but boy, it sure feels like this overwhelming mountain to climb. And you eventually climbed, well, maybe not up the mountain, but out of the valley, so to speak. Do you have an example of, even if it's something simple like building a piece of IKEA furniture or something, I get to that point of like, I'll never get this thing together. Like, what have you experienced that helps you get out of that valley of kind of hopelessness and despair?
I mean, outside of fitness, I'm bad at a lot of things. So I'm constantly getting humbled in life. So it's good for that to happen. People need a balance in their life. If everything's too easy, then you get complacent. You need to be challenged, but you also need to experience little rewards along the way to keep you encouraged and keep you going. And that's why somebody who might be very overweight, you have to set little goals, and those little goals add up to bigger goals. And it's what you were saying before. It's that change that's very gradual. And then all of a sudden, oh, I'm down 50 pounds, but it's not all of a sudden that you're down 50 pounds. It was 1 pound here, 1 pound there, another pound there. And little by little it happens. So, and we all have ups and downs. I have moments where I slip up and I eat something that I otherwise know that I shouldn't. And the important thing is when it happens to not necessarily be too hard on yourself and say, okay, I did that, it happened, and you move forward.
Mm-hmm. Onwards and upwards. I've always kind of had the perspective that, when it comes to exercise, we've recognized that it's a process of progression, of improvement. Oh, push-ups are feeling a little stronger today. Oh, the hips are more stable on these pistol squats than they were a month ago. And so we recognize that it's a process of change and improvement over time. And yet, for some reason, that attitude sometimes is lost when it comes to diet. And one of the best things I ever did was always looking at diet for nutrition from this perspective of, okay, like it's progression. Like, how am I trying to improve things? Not just do it right, or eat right kind of thing, but it's a process of progress and evolution and improvement. And yeah, sometimes you may, hit your mistakes and things like, oh, not that direction, got to go in this other direction. But again, we recognize it with exercise. But why don't we have that with diet, where we recognize, okay, my diet is constantly improving and changing and getting better over time versus throwing a switch and it's just got to be right and perfect and done and all or nothing.
That word diet itself sort of has the connotation that you're just doing it temporarily. And I'm going to eat clean for a little bit, go on a diet, shed a little fat, and then I can go back to all those bad habits that I like. And I really was hesitant to even put that word in the title of this program, because that's not the mindset that I want people to adopt. I want them to come into it more, like you said, prepared to make change gradually over a long period of time. And that's when you have success. Because, right, like you said, when you try to flip too much too quickly, it won't last very long. Those gradual changes occur by chipping away little by little. It's that process. It's that same slow progression. The same way that you're not going to deadlift 400 pounds your first day at the gym, you're not going to lose 40 pounds in 2 weeks of eating differently. It takes time.
But Al, I want it now. I want it fast. I want it. So if I really just sacrifice and blood, sweat, and tears and put myself through hell, isn't that going to make me get the results a hell of a lot faster?
It doesn't work like that. And you know that, but I know what you're doing. And that's unfortunately a byproduct of our society. And that's part of why people love fast food so much, is because of that instant gratification. It feels good in the moment. And one of the hardest things to do, but one of the most important things and useful things you can do in life, is delayed gratification. Understanding that waiting to enjoy something later and being able to say, well, you know what, this work is more important right now, and I'll have my reward afterwards, is much more useful because it adds up day after day.
It's that adding up that is valuable too. Like, the old adage of how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time kind of thing.
That's right.
One day at a time, one meal at a time. One of the perspectives that I've always liked about diet that helped me a lot was thinking like, well, this is, to a degree, it's a discipline, it's a skill. And the great thing about eating is we do so much of it. We work out like, 2, 3, maybe 4 times a week. But, if you eat a few times a day, that's lots of opportunities to practice. Practice preparing your own food and portion control and all these other sorts of things. It's a lot of practice.
Well, that's the big challenge of it too. And I'm glad you brought that up, because the people who I mentioned earlier, the people who are saying to me, I'm doing the workouts, but I'm having a hard time with the diet. That's because, to your point, you could work out 4 hours a week and that's it. It's done. Check the box. But the food thing's always there. Anytime you're not asleep, you might be tempted to eat some junk food that you shouldn't be eating. So you could always derail, at least temporarily, at any moment. Whereas the workout, if you wake up at 6 a.m., you bang out that workout, it's done by 8, you're good. It's done. Nothing's going to stop you from having that box checked for the day.
Right. It does seem a little bit of an easier thing. I've heard lots of people say, oh, the workout that's the easy part. The pushing yourself in the gym, that's the easy part. Getting the sleep, drinking plenty of water, making sure you don't have too much toxic information coming to you from, toxic people in your life, and the diet and everything. That's the hard part, because it's always there, or it's always potentially there. So I've always recognized like the importance of, particularly of like your immediate environment too, with that. Like, oh, I can't, stop eating Oreo cookies. I'm like, why are you having Oreo cookies at home?
Starts with not buying them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, to your point, you've got workout equipment right behind you. I've got a gym in my backyard. When you have these things in your house, you're more likely to use them. You're more likely to work out. So, right, you got to set up your environment for success. Keep good food in your fridge. Have your lifestyle so that working out can be easy, whether that means having a gym membership that's right by your house on the way to work, or what you have and I have, which is home equipment. You've got to make sure that you've got a plan. And that's why it's the Shredded Dad diet plan, because if you don't plan, you are not going to succeed. And sometimes you have to deviate from the plan, and that's okay. You can when you need to. But if you don't even have a plan, you're screwed.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You've got to have something to base decisions off of, okay, I usually would do that, but, this is happening and the circumstances change. So I'm going to modify a little bit for this weekend or this vacation or whatever. But you need something to edit versus just going willy-nilly off of nothing.
And the other problem is, if you want to find an excuse to do something you shouldn't do, you always can. It's always some holiday. It's always something to celebrate, right? It's 5 o'clock somewhere, as the saying goes. So at a certain point, you've got to say, hey, what am I doing with my life? And, it's one thing when you're younger, if you're out there partying and you want to, sow some oats and all that. But when you get to be older, you really have to take care of yourself and think a little farther. They say your brain doesn't fully develop until you're 25. And I certainly, looking back on my younger years, can understand that.
Yeah.
But you've really got, at a certain point, you've got to start thinking long term. You can't just live in what's going to feel good right now. And if people don't wake up and recognize that, then they're going to be in for a big trouble. And you and me have talked about this before. It's easy for people to understand that with other things in their life. They know they have to go to work every day, or at least do their work from home if they work from home. They know they have to bring their kid to school, where the kid's not going to go to school in the morning, or whatever things they do. But it's like, you've got to just have that same amount of commitment to everything in your life that's important to you, at least.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't care about having the best cookware, so I've got plates and stuff that I've got it, from garage sales and stuff, but, I'll drop, all my savings on decent exercise equipment kind of thing.
I bet you've bought some used equipment too over the years.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Actually, I don't think I've actually, paid full price for most of anything for quite a while. I'm always looking on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace, and there's always someone.
I know these companies send you free stuff. Right? They send it to me too. That's one of the nice things about this gig.
Yeah, you just got a barbell set. I saw it in your video today.
That was just fate. That was just karma, I guess. The universe handed that to me. But no, I'm talking about you get companies that make products that want to send you free products a lot, and sometimes they're good, I'm sure you'll make a review. I always do. Sometimes they're not so good, and then we just don't talk about it.
There was only one time I got a product and I had to email the company. I'm like, guys, this is not a good product. Do you even want me to make a video? And they're like, well, make the video and just send it to us about your criticisms and don't publish it. I'm like, okay. So I did that. And then like 2 weeks later, they're like, are you ever going to publish the video? And I was like, I thought you did. Okay. But it was the one and only time I was like, don't buy it. It's crap.
You did publish the video.
I did publish by their request.
They just wanted someone to be talking about their product, even if it was saying something bad. Right. Even bad news is better than not being in the news at all.
Must be. And I'm pretty sure they don't make
them bad publicity is right. Any publicity is good publicity. There's a saying. I'm messing it up.
No, you got it. You got it. Exactly. Just get it out there. Someone was like, okay, well, very
Probably
good.
Somebody bought it anyway after watching that video.
Oh, God, I hope not.
It probably worked. What was the product? Now I'm curious.
So during the pandemic, there was a slew of, and I still think this is a product that could work. I so want it to work. It was a pull-up bar that had the ability to wedge against a wall or a door frame. And there's various different types out there, but the idea was, instead of levering on the door frame and stuff, it was these pads
going
that
outwards.
push outwards.
Was
and
it a spring?
Most of the designs, if you put your weight on it, it pushed even harder. So I thought it was great because it would be an adjustable height bar that you could put at any height in doorway, or, you could do rows and things. And I bought one myself, just thinking this is going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread for calisthenics. And the thing is that in order to work, they have to put so much outward pressure on whatever you're pushing against that unless it's something like concrete or brick, it's going to damage it. I mean, I in order to support my 190 some odd pounds, I had to put the one that I was reviewing just basically screwed outwards. And I had to put so much force on it. It was bowing the door frame outwards. And that was a metal door frame too. And I was like, this is...
Maybe there's somebody who saw that video who, like you said, has a concrete door frame. It was like, you know what? My door frame can handle that. And they bought it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always thought if I have a concrete cinder block like hallway or something, I'm totally going to get one of these things. But yeah, it was just damaging. And the one that I had bought, I had put up in my hallway, and I used that as my gym during the pandemic and everything. And then when I took it down, it took off like pieces of sheetrock and everything. I was like, oh, this idea does not work for most surfaces. It's too damaging. But anyway, we're getting a little off track. But
no, I'm enjoying this line of conversation. We talked enough about my program. We could talk about some stupid gadgets that we don't like. I think this is a very fine way to end the conversation.
Have you ever had anything like that was just like, oh no, not this?
The first one that springs to mind was a product, and I think there were a few products that were just like this that all came out around the same time and then all disappeared fairly quickly. It was a thing to help release your psoas, and it was just like a piece of plastic, like shaped like a U, and you're just supposed to lay on it, and it pushes into your psoas.
Yeah, I have seen those, and there were some that were like a big roller and things like that.
A lot of people who seemed to be legit were saying, "Oh, this is a great product," and they said, "Hey," they emailed me, "Would you like one?" I said, "Sure, send it to me," and I just got it, and it was just the cheapest, just useless, and I laid on it. It was like, this isn't doing anything. And so that one stands out.
Yeah. Thankfully, I've found that these things are usually somewhat few and far between. I get, being a suspension guy, I get a lot of companies saying, "Oh, we've got the greatest suspension device in the world," and usually I can just look at pictures and be like, no, it's got this flaw and this design here and there and stuff, but sometimes they're really insistent. They're like, "We really want to say," I'm like, "All right, send it to me." And sometimes, I'm wrong. I love it when I'm wrong. I just reviewed a very technological piece of equipment that's on an Indiegogo campaign now. And I was like, I'm not really sure about this, but whatever. Okay. And I thought it was really cool. It's great. I mean, it's certainly not simple. It's way out of left field for me, but it's pretty cool. It's a piece of strength training equipment, uses electronic resistance and motors and everything. It's pretty wild, but sometimes you get surprised. That's the thing, is you got to be open sometimes, because I think whenever we come across a new product or a new idea or something, we immediately sometimes jump to the conclusion of, oh, I know what this is. Oh, I know what this is about. I know what this is going to be.
It's good to be skeptical, but you don't want to be closed-minded. Skeptical, but also curious.
Exactly. Yeah. Curiosity is a good thing. And if you have just a little bit of an openness of like, well, I'm pretty sure, but let me just kind of dive into it a little further and see what else I can find. And usually, in my opinion, if something's legit or something's good, you're going to figure that out real fast. That it's not going to be something like, well, let me play with this piece of equipment or try this approach.
But occasionally, it's something that is just gimmicky, and it can trick you at first because it's really hard at first, and you're like, oh, this feels really legit, but it's just a gimmick. And once you kind of figure out the gimmick, you're like, oh, this isn't really a better workout.
Yeah. Yep. And I think with some experience, you figure that out very quick. But I've always also thought, like, if something is really positive, you're going to have a good, strong, positive result too. Where it's like, oh, wow, this really made some improvement. Because I think a lot of times, and in my experience, if we're like, well, it could be this, it could be that, and you can spend a whole lot of time online asking for opinions and debates and all this. What do you guys think about this versus that, and A versus B and everything? And you're getting different opinions, and you're just running around in circles. And I usually find that, if you just try the thing you're probably going to find out more in 5 minutes of experience than 5 weeks of trying to figure it out through Google and YouTube reviews. I mean, just
Yeah, you're right.
yeah, a weird experience for me. I was like doing all sorts of camera reviews. The first like camera I wanted to buy, I was like, I don't know. And then I finally went to the camera shop, and like once I had it in my hand, I was like, oh, this feels great. Okay, that's it. And a little bit of experience goes a long way when it comes to figuring out what's going to work best for you. So that's why I'm always encouraging people, unless it's something that's going to be like dangerous or very risky inherently. Like, what do you think about acrobatic tightrope walking or something? It's like, oh boy, you got to be careful here. But most of the time, I encourage people, like, buy the program, buy the equipment. Sometimes, yeah, it doesn't quite work out, but the experience alone will show you more of what the direction is that you do need to go into. And if nothing else, it's worth the experience, because inevitably you always will end up with the things that are going to work best for you if you just keep trying. But when we have that closed mindset of, oh, I know what this is about because it's basing it off of your previous experience and nothing more, you're always just going to stay stuck on the treadmill of doing the same things you've always done and not going anywhere from where you are now.
Yeah, it's definitely good to try new things. And, especially if you're someone like you or me who's worked out for many, many, many years, you want to mix it up. It could get a little repetitive just doing the same exercises forever. I mean, it is good. Some people take that too far and they mix up their workout every other workout, and then you don't make progress. But sometimes over the course of many, many years, it's a lot of time to explore a lot of different disciplines. I know you've done a lot of different things: martial arts, cycling, calisthenics, weights. I've done a lot of different things over the years too. And to your point, they're all complementary.
Oh, absolutely. They build on each other. You're usually not finding too many things that are going to be like competing against one another, unless you're taking things to an extreme. But for the most part, everything just builds up and enhances everything else. And it's just all better and onward and upward from then on out.
I agree. When we're talking about general fitness for the mainstream population, we're not talking about someone who specializes in a sport. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Branch out, do different things, and it keeps it fun. It's that's so much of it is the desire to continue, and you have to really like it. It's like I say about your food. If you're eating stuff that you don't enjoy just because, I got to eat this boring, rice and chicken breast, and this is all I can eat, that's going to get old really fast.
Yeah. So again, we got to think of the long-term ramifications, not just as far as benefits of like, where am I headed in the next 20 years health-wise, but what are the habits that I'm adopting now that I can fairly confidently say, yeah, I can definitely do this for the next 3 to 5 years, that I can stick to this type of approach for a while. Because if we want to be in better shape for the next 20 years, we need to adopt at least approaches and methods that we can utilize and evolve and grow into over the next 20 years.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, you and I, we've known each other for a decade already. I think I met you in 2013.
Yeah, first PCC.
It's pretty cool that in spite of all the things that have changed in our lives, you've moved, I've moved, relationships have come and gone, we're still doing this. We still work out. We're still training people. Like that's been the one constant in my life for pretty much more than 20 years now, while everything else has been this changing whirlwind.
It's good to have those rocks in your life, those anchors.
Yes.
What's something you can kind of anchor yourself to, so when the seas are really rough and life is going all crazy, it's like, still got in that great workout. I still can see my visible abs, and I'm still keeping my diet on check and stuff. If you've got those anchors, those go a long way at keeping you on track for life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's one of the only things that you really can control. So much of what happens in our lives is out of our hands, but you and only you decide what goes in your mouth. Unless you're a little baby.
I don't know. If you ever visit my parents during the holidays, you're not going to have much control over that.
Well, if you're putting yourself in that situation, you know what you're getting yourself into.
That is true. Yep.
But unless you're 8 months old and mommy's giving you the airplane, you make that decision.
Yep. That's true. Al, so everything that people are looking for your resources and stuff, still on your website and everything? I'll
Yeah,
be, of course, linking everything down below, but is there a special place where people can find your new plan?
I probably have said this on your podcast before, but I'm really easy to find if you could spell my name correctly. My last name is Kavadlo, and the new program is called the Shredded Dad Diet Plan. So people Google Shredded Dad Diet. Hopefully, it will be at the top of their search. So it
Fantastic.
should
Yep.
be it should not be the case that anyone wants to buy this program but cannot because they can't find it. In this day and age, I have enough faith in people's SEO
Yeah.
capabilities or their search engine capabilities. My SEO, I suppose.
Yep. I found it real quick and easy. And of course, anybody who's subscribed to your newsletter will be able to find it quite easily as well. Links
They've
to all
already
of
been
your,
bombarded about it.
yep,
And if they haven't
absolutely,
bought it
down
yet,
below.
what the hell are you waiting for? Anyone who's still listening, an hour, Anna? Come on, man.
Fantastic, Al. Well, thank you very much. It's always so good to talk and catch up and see all the new projects and things that you've been involved with. And I always enjoy the Instagrams, watching you have these changes and things, your new puppy that you just barely got,
Yeah.
playing around with the weight set. It's always fun to watch you experimenting and bringing these new things into your life.
And I feel the same way about you, and you look fantastic. You know, I'm just thinking, like, wow, when I met you 10 years ago, I think you looked exactly the same. And not to say that you looked old then, but that you haven't aged at all.
I had more hair. I had
Did
hair
you?
back then, if I remember correctly.
It was short. If you had any, there wasn't as much
Yep.
as there may have been at another point in time.
Absolutely. Very good. All right, Al, thank you so very, very much for your time and coming on here. And again, links, everything down below. Any parting words of wisdom for the listeners out there, Al?
Hey, we're working out.
All right, folks. And with that, I'll remind you to be fit and live free.